right, it's 9 o'clock. 9 a.m., yeah?
Ryan's like, boom, it's 9.
9 a.m. Let's start off with a little bit of a test here. Let's all stand up, please. All right, who was in bed sleeping at 11? Sit down.
I was.
Were you
I behaved.
midnight? 1 a.m. Wow, we've got some late ones. 2 a.m. Still up at 2 a.m.
Oh, no.
Did you go to bed?
Here's the winner. 3.
3 a.m. 4? We have a 4. 3, 4. Okay. Now, last question. Stand up if you're still wearing yesterday's clothes. Don't have any of that. Good. So today we're here to talk about things that did not work. In fact, it was originally called Shit That Doesn't Work, but it went through marketing and it came back out as stuff. So the idea today is to try to make it a lively, fun conversation. We've got talent acquisition leaders here who can share some success or some stories that they've had, what didn't work. We're going to go through all of those conversations and hopefully just share what didn't work. This concept originally came in 2011. I was at a conference, Human Capital Institute conference with Chris Hoyt, and we were talking about what did you like at this conference? And we said, you know, everybody always just talks about how awesome they are, and look what we did, and this all worked perfect, and oh, we're so amazing. And we thought, wouldn't it be really cool if we had a conference topic where it's like, well, what didn't work, right? And what did you learn from it? So that's essentially what we're trying to achieve today. Like I said, we want to keep it fun and lively. Today, our esteemed guests, over here on the very far left, Melissa Thompson from Citrix. We have Larry McAllister from Equinix, Lauren LaRose from Suncor Energy, and Bruce Matos from UC Berkeley. So we're going to start off with our first situation. Oh, here's the thing. Oh, and I'm Ryan Cook. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Ryan.
It's not about me. So here's a good example of a fail. Over 250 sick after eating at an Indiana Olive Garden. And here's the coupon for a free dinner for two. Oops.
Yeah.
Someone didn't plan that right.
Thinking not many people use that coupon.
We've got a couple of these today. Keep it lively. So, Melissa, we'll start with you. Citrix.
Well, before I start, I want to talk a little bit about Citrix.
Okay.
So Citrix is a leader in mobile workspaces, and we enable ways for people to work better. This is our 25-year anniversary. We're about 10,000 employees and right around $3 billion in revenue. We have dual headquarters in the United States in Santa Clara and Fort Lauderdale.
Perfect.
So I joined Citrix in 2010, and the company was spending quite a bit of money on agencies. And as the new kid on the block, you know, when you come into a new company and you're the talent acquisition leader, one of the things that you have to do is sort of assess what all is going on. And because so much was being spent on agencies, I thought, 25% of the current open recs have an agency against them, and we're quite often filling roles spending that big money on agencies, 30% fees, 20% fees. So I thought about, okay, how about if we put in a two-pronged strategy? We can look at improving our direct sourcing rate, so ways that we go direct and get candidates, and improving our proactive sourcing rate. How do we, proactively build pipelines? How would we get this strategy to work? Okay, so we're gonna hire great talent acquisition consultants who really understand how to do this, and we're gonna hire sourcers. This would really get us to the place where we could reduce the overall agency usage, and I started talking about how we could get it down below 20%. Well, it didn't actually work out like I planned. First, the stakeholders were not ready for the change. They were used to being able to call their favored agency, and when I started saying, you can't call your favorite agency, basically there was a bit of a riot. The other thing is, I started helping them to understand what proactive pipelining was. And I actually went to a lot of the senior leaders and sold them on this concept, but then I didn't get the budget for the sourcers. So the next year, as we're looking at the metrics are starting to look a little bit better, but the time to fill is creeping up. The overall cost per hire is not as good as it could be. And now I've got leaders parroting back to me, you know, if we had proactive sourcing, it would reduce the cost and improve our time to hire. And I thought, well, the message got across. It's too bad I didn't get the resources to really drive the solution. So what we did the next year was actually hire a few sourcers that sat directly with recruiters. We actually doubled down on our investment in LinkedIn and drove direct sourcing. I spent much more time with hiring managers and leaders, helping them understand why you don't have to spend this much to fill a job when someone really understands your business and can really drive your solution. So I want to talk about what the 3 lessons learned were. The first one is know your audience. Really market your ideas up front. So I did a good job of marketing proactive sourcing, but not really driving the wait for the solution. Wait for it. And my second one is really something that I'd always lived by, and I can't believe I missed it in this case, which is under-promise and over-deliver. I see you guys nodding, because you know this. It's almost a given. And then the last piece is stakeholder buy-in is vital. But you got to get them bought in across the whole stack, not just on one piece.
How'd you compete with all those vendors, though? Because they take you some nice lunches.
Yeah, and cars and boats and stuff. You know what? I actually got the recruiters out, talking to hiring managers, building that relationship. And once hiring managers felt like my recruiter understands my business, and now I can fill the job without having to pay $20,000, oh, this could work.
What's your internal cost to hire? Do you know? Versus that $20,000, I'm sure it's less, but do you know what the
It is right at $7,500.
Okay, good. So good value to the business.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Larry, let's, actually, here's another one, a good one. Linens and things, now hiring. Going out of business, now hiring. Love that. So, Larry, you're up next. We want to talk about your situation. Can you tell us your story?
Sure. So my name's Larry. I have to stand. I'm a stander. So my name's Larry McAllister. I'm the Vice President of Global Talent Management. So that's acquisition and management, global mobility, and development and culture around the world. So Equinix is about 3,800 employees, 19 countries, and we have data centers. So anytime you touch your phone and you move data, it's going through a data center. And they're so secure, we don't tell people where they are. And our one in Amsterdam is surrounded by a moat, literally. So I'm going to go.
You said you don't tell where they are. I'm going to Amsterdam.
Yeah. So it's top secret data. Everyone's data is there, so we don't tell people where they are. So I'm going to go a little bit off topic, off of metrics, because I was here. I remember when I was last year, I was in Las Vegas at Talent Connect, and I was hearing all these great ideas about, getting everyone to be a recruiter for you. Everyone's a talent ambassador. And if you get the recruiters working for, the employees working for you, you don't need as many recruiters, you have more people helping you. So I ran out of Las Vegas with this great idea in my head. And I grew up in Vegas, I went to high school in Vegas, I was telling my friends what a great idea this is. I had lunch with my mom, as I do when I leave Las Vegas, and I told her, I'm gonna get 11 people, 11 hiring managers around a table, and we're all gonna source at the same time. And she just said, 11? That is foreshadowing for this story, people. She didn't want to, tamp down my excitement, so I got on the plane, I go to the executive staff. We're going to walk out of this meeting with 40 candidates that we're going to like. It's going to be the fastest way we've ever recruited. They're like, go do it, man. So no context setting. I get into a room with 11 people, hiring manager, here's the 3 people he likes. Let's all see who we like this person. Everyone, open your laptops and open it up to LinkedIn. And they all do it, and they start typing, and I feel so proud of myself. I'm counting in my head how many candidates. So the 3 people near the hiring manager are really sourcing. The 4 people not near the hiring manager are like working on their profile, a little bit of email. The 3 people at the end of the table get up and go to the board. I'm like, this is even better than I expected. They're writing on the board, and I'm like, they're engineers around my problem. This is gonna be great. So I walk down there, I look at them. They're just writing code and arguing about it. So it's turned into a fight. It's literally turned into a fight that has nothing to do with why I brought them in here. So we did walk out of there with 3 candidates we liked, not the 44. And so it was abject failure for that moment, because what I promised and what I thought I was going to deliver had nothing to do with actually happening in that meeting. So for me, and like I always am, I have to temper my excitement and forward thinking with reality sometimes. So I think we're going to go to lessons learned here. So build the bridge to tomorrow. That is my big lesson here. It's always good to have the vision. You always have to come back to the vision. When things break down, things are always going to break down. You always have to say, this is what we're going to do. But here's what we're going to try to do today. So if I would have went into the executive staff and said, I'm going to just try this, right? If I would have went in there and I could have said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I did this wrong, but when I went back and said, let me tell you the story I just told you guys. I had this great idea, we tried it, and we learned and got better. Okay, what else do we have? Yeah, one more, let's go one more.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, wait until beta before you tell everyone what you're going to do. Small groups, small tests, rapid iteration, get better, build the process, and then start spreading it out around. So what we talked about is it's never, if you set the context right and you work through it as a beta or as an alpha, you're never really failing, you're just getting better. So context and getting better is really the message for me.
Did you guys ever do that same exercise again?
Yeah.
Like improve on it? Really?
Yeah. So the first, no, I'm just joking. So the first change we did was I got the magic plug for the projector. So I was like guarding everyone. You never know which one I'm going to plug into, so don't get off the LinkedIn. That was it. That was my immediate reaction, which was like, I could no longer get 11 back in a room after I started doing that. Yeah. So that was the smart thing. So then we really started using the LinkedIn tools to find out who really in the organization knew the candidates. Yep. And then we went directly to them in small groups or individuals. So we're still doing that now.
So would you suggest that as a good practice? I haven't tried that before. I think that's
I do believe that. I mean, I still believe, and hardcore recruiters hate when I say this, I still believe if someone you know reaches out to you first, it's way more powerful than when a recruiter reaches out to you. And I don't know if that was jeering. Oh, there was a thumbs up. I don't know if someone had a rifle. So I do believe the power of the connection really
Makes a big
increases.
difference.
He was still standing when I said 4 a.m.
Yeah, he's the 4 a.m. guy.
Oh, 3, sorry. All right, good. Let's check this next one. Bud Light, party cruise, 4 days, 3 nights, 2 ships, 1 beer. Really, just one? Can I get 1 per day, or maybe? I don't know. That was a little bit of a mistake there. All right, Suncor, let's hear your story.
I will also stand.
All right,
Standers.
Mine is set up a little bit differently as well, and I was a little bit embarrassed when we were talking about shit that didn't work, and I was like, man, do I have lists for you. Like, I can talk about so much stuff. So I've worked for Suncor Energy. Do we have any Canadians in the room? Woo! Awesome. All right, so Suncor is Canada's largest company. It formed in 2009 when Suncor bought Petro-Canada, which is a large energy company and owns a lot of the gas stations. And coming together, a key risk to the organization was going to be our ability to attract top talent. And so we started out on a recruitment, marketing, and branding exercise. And I started in the team really setting up when the rubber hits the road and we really start executing on the marketing strategy to attract all these people to our organization. So we've had a lot of lessons learned and a lot of success within the team, and it's grown over time. I've been in the role for about 3 years. But if we get to the lessons learned, I'll walk you through some of the stuff we've kind of learned along the way. The first one is that you won't know until you try. We pull a lot of information from traditional marketing, really trying to know our audience, the roles that we have to fill, how we communicate with them. But especially when I started about 3 years ago, there wasn't a lot of other places to look to go and do this. So if we looked at recruitment marketing events, we had traditionally had like a really shabby booth. There was some duct tape. We sent some recruiters. They weren't really aligned on the messages. They didn't know what the heck to do with resumes if people brought them. We went and made some really cool booths. We had lots of multimedia. We thought, oh man, we have all these videos. We're gonna play these videos and people are gonna plug in these headphones and they're gonna watch our employee stories and they're just gonna be so pumped to come and work for us. And what happened is they just took the headphones and walked away and didn't talk to us at all.
Nice giveaway.
We also had people, you know, everything's apply online. We'd stand there, candidates would wait a long time to talk to us. We'd say, that's awesome, go apply online to a rec that you're into and we'll see where it goes from there. And just candidates getting so upset, like, I've applied online, I've waited an hour to come and talk to you, like, I wanna give you my resume. And we really learned that just that simple transaction of taking the resume made such a difference. It also really helped us with the tracking of the event. We could go back and look at how many people we actually talked to, how many of those could be a potential fit, actually put them into a system to proactively follow up with. So that was a pretty good lesson learned there. And then another thing that's been interesting is we've started doing feature weeks on our social media pages. So diving into one topic like working in Fort McMurray or engineering jobs at Suncor. And we did one where it was head office jobs. So we had all these visuals created, because visual on social media is a really big trend, and it was the theme week was head office jobs, and I had reception call me on Tuesday and said, what's this career fair you're having? And there's a lot of people here with their resumes getting really, really mad. Can you come down here? And so what we realized is it seemed like we were having a head office jobs career fair, even though it did not say that anywhere on there. But there's a lot of people that English wasn't their first language. They saw head office. It was this week. They were coming down. So lots of lessons learned along the way about your audience. And you won't really know how things are perceived sometimes until you try. But we were able to learn some really good stuff from that and continue to improve on those feature weeks and whatnot going forward. Staying up on the trends is a really interesting one. Because recruitment marketing is such a new area, you often have to look to other industries like consumer marketing to really identify the trends. Externally for Suncor, we don't have a retail brand. The main reason why people would come to our website is for careers. We have about 70% of the traffic to our website, which is millions, is for careers. And staying up on the trends is something that I realized a little while ago. We should have been a lot more influential with the volume and kind of the seat that we have at the table with the recruitment aspect. We were seeing the number of people coming on mobile double year over year, month over month. But at the time, no one was thinking, oh man, wouldn't it be great if people could apply on mobile? Wouldn't it be great if our career website was optimized for mobile? We kept seeing the trends, but we weren't sharing that around the organization and really bringing that to the table to influence. So we're just now at the point where we're revamping the website and getting it mobile responsive. But those are really big projects that involve a lot of people in the organization. And it should have been us pushing that agenda forward, not waiting for the communications team that didn't really have a need to go mobile, waiting for them to pull the trigger. And then the last one is really the stakeholder buy-in. Once again, we work a lot with the communications team, with the recruitment team, with vendors and other organizations, and we really have to work on leveraging the expertise that are there and then providing the recruitment marketing background so that it can kind of come together and be what we really need it to be, and have the messages be responsive to our audience, that type of thing. So those are the lessons we've learned along the way so far, and it's been a really fun ride.
That's awesome. Stakeholder buy-in is really challenging, I think, because especially when you're doing some progressive stuff that they don't have proven ROI, and how do you go about kind of telling the story and convincing them when you don't have the data to prove that?
Well, I start with one beer.
One of your turn.
We buy a lot of beer, we buy a lot of coffee, and we really have to kind of use our weight sometimes at the table to say, this is working in other industries, or this is a really big trend in consumer marketing, and we need to try it. We use the word pilot a lot. We love to pilot everything, beta, pilot. So we usually start small and then can measure the success from there as much as we can before we roll it out more largely, but that's how we've been most successful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Yahoo 404. Who gets this? Where's the techies in the room? 404 redirect, not found. Right next to Yahoo.
Oh, that's a
That wasn't planned. All right, Bruce, you're up. We have to share mics, so I'm gonna tee it up here. I'm gonna hand it over.
So my name is Bruce Matos. I work at the University of California, Berkeley. I'm here to talk about raising 3 daughters as lessons learned. Shit doesn't go well. Oh, I'm sorry. This was my support group. So UC Berkeley, we have 30,000 employees in various capacities, including academic. We have 36,000 students. We are the #1 public university in the world. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Thank you. We started down a path about 9 years ago to have a career path and a career ladder, and so it was put into place before I got there. We have 350 departments, and probably the majority of the campus wasn't using talent acquisition, and we were going to a centralized campus shared services model for recruitment. So our goal, our situation was finding the most qualified person to fill a job quickly, effectively, yet we still had poor job descriptions. And it was trying to put something together, so we created this form called the intake form, and we were telling our recruitment team to go out and, meet with hiring managers, and they would email the form out and wouldn't talk to the hiring managers. And then we had these fantastic detailed job descriptions with the title, for those of you who can appreciate this, CSS, Service Delivery Manager, Teams 1, 2, and 4. And that was what was going out on our LinkedIn featured jobs. Yeah. So for those of you who are Teams 1, 2, and 4, there you go. So it really took an education process of going out and meeting with the hiring managers and really learning what the positions were about. So let's kind of transition into lessons learned, because we have many different languages represented on our campus, and I can certainly say that you can't market, you can't source, you can't network effectively without understanding the position, the culture, and why we have the position. So really having our recruitment team sit down with senior leadership and have them describe what the person's doing. And then we have a bunch of questions that we want to get to have an understanding of. And what's the department about? What's your ethos here? What are you trying to do? What's going to be successful in this role? And really having a true understanding of that, because that kind of sets the roadmap. We had to build the relationship. So in this room, how many people, raise your hand if you are a trusted advisor with your hiring managers? Okay, did that happen day one? Exactly. How many of you have teenage daughters and you're a trusted advisor? So building the relationship, maybe I wish we could have done beer, but we have marijuana's legal. Just starting with going out and just listening, taking the time to listen to these people, some of which might be a Nobel laureate, which is kind of intimidating. Some are a world-renowned sporting coach, like our rugby coach. He has 42 national titles, and he does hire people that aren't coaches. But you have to sit down and listen to them and really understand what they need. And once you become that trusted advisor, once you develop that roadmap, once you put together a recruitment plan for them, then we go in knowing where to look. So we've started to be a little bit more proactive about it, because we were going in with this great form to ask questions, and then they were emailing it. Now we're out and we're invited to the table, but when we come to the table, we already have an idea of where the talent is. And so I think that's the lesson learned, is where's our small pocket of talent when we're looking for a CFO that has to have NCAA experience, or a CFO that has to have fundraising experience. So it's just kind of knowing where to go with that. And I think over the time, you talked about stakeholders, it really comes down to being that trusted advisor. It really comes down to learning the job and creating a job title, a working job title that makes sense, because teams 5 and 8, you were kind of screwed if you didn't have that in your profile. So,
Right.
yeah.
Good story. Well, none of them are like epic failures, so you're not too bad. I think one of the slides that I sent over was a picture of United had, you probably remember this in the news, a banner over the subway entrance that says, "You'll like where we land." And it was just outside of the World Trade Center after the devastation. And so you think about that, nobody at United was like, oh, this is the perfect time to play that ad, right? Nobody thought that, nobody did that, it was just unintentional. But that's what, your best laid plans sometimes fall apart.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing those stories with us. One thing that I want to kind of do is turn it a little bit more philosophical, right? We talked about a specific situation, but how do your organizations look at failure in general? Mm-hmm. And specifically, I'm looking at, in the past, we had time to really think through things and plan and make sure it was meticulous and maybe mitigate some of the risk through that planning. But as technology advances so quick, as everything's constantly changing, the ability to do that is a little less. Yeah. And so in talent acquisition, I think we need to stay very agile, very innovative, yet at the same time our companies expect that we're mitigating risk to some extent, right? So how do you balance that, and what's your personal philosophy on it? Melissa?
So Citrix has a real philosophy around being design-driven, and our customer experience team is very engaged in a lot of the work that we do. And they actually have a saying about failing fast. Prototype it, experiment with it, fail fast, learn from your mistakes, and then move on. You can't wallow when you make a mistake. You have to see that it was a mistake, learn from it. But at the same time, Ryan and I have talked about this a lot, you also can't only make mistakes. You have to have times when you run completely smoothly through a process. And I think once you've made a few missteps, it makes it much easier for you to do that, fail fast, learn a lesson, and move on.
Yeah, I was coming up with my team. I was trying to say, how am I going to talk about failure? I want them to not be afraid to fail. And so I was like, celebrate success, ampersand, failure. I'm like, I don't really want to celebrate the failure, but I want to learn from it, right?
Yeah.
But how do I make it safe for my team to feel like they can fail and they shouldn't be afraid to?
Right.
Larry, what about you? What's your personal philosophy?
So I have a story in my head again. So we just...
Oh, he's standing.
I have to stand.
He's
I have to
standing
stand.
again.
So we just, Kelly Kaiser, my talent delivery director, and I, we just went off cycle and got approval to bring in HireView, which is digital interviewing and scheduling and predictive analytics, right? So it's a complete change. So when I pitched it to the executive staff, I made the point to say, we are bringing in HireView, we're going to have 5 times faster way to source people in and qualify people, be so fast. And then I said, but it's a technology change, and we know how that goes, right, CIO? And he said, yeah, those things are rough, right? So already setting the stage that you're bringing new technology, and he's done 50 of them, and he says they're not easy, and there's a lot of reasons why it can go bad. So I've already foreshadowed how this is going to go. So there's always people who are like, I don't want to do the new thing, right? I don't want to do the new thing. So you roll it out, you start testing it, and as soon as something goes wrong, they have like a tribal dance. That went wrong, that went wrong, that went wrong, that went wrong. Told you! So I see it. So how you fix that problem is you say, thank you so much for identifying that problem. At the end of this, when we're going 5 times faster than we are now, we're going to look back and thank you for making sure we found that problem. So take your tribal dance, go back to work, and we'll move on. So I do think it's keeping the vision in mind and saying, yep, it's a mistake now, it's going to happen, but we're still going to get to that end. That's going to be better than we're doing it now. And you bring the CIO and people in at the executive staff when you set tone to say, yep, it's not going to be easy. And I think those 2 things just keep you moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on the dance.
You like my tribal
good.
dance?
Pretty good. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Bruce, I'm going to hand you the mic. How about for you?
I think for us at Berkeley, providing universal access to students is really important, and kind of reimagining the world. It kind of comes back to our operating principles, and I sincerely believe this is on our campus. But a great point, you can't have too many failures. But innovation, simplifying, but you got to hold each other accountable. So we take some steps forward, and it can be really, really tough with people that have PhD. They have a parking spot that says Nobel laureate. They're the football coach. Well, football not doing so great, but go Bears. But I think it's just putting it out there and really reminding the hiring managers that you're putting your best foot forward, and at some point in time they have to believe in you. And I support my team. I've got a colleague here from the campus, Alex, out in the audience. I think we as in management, we've got to take the bullseye on our chest for our team. And sometimes you got to take it for them because you've encouraged them to put their best foot forward. And so as a leader, you step out there and you go to that hiring manager and say, absolutely, I had them do that. I wanted them to try. That's my mistake, and let's move forward. And I think that by putting yourself out there, you hold yourself accountable to the mistake and don't hide it. Be sincere about it. That helps.
Yeah, it's amazing how much people try to hide those mistakes. Like it's like own up to it. Just take it and admit it. And I think the failure isn't in the failure itself; it's in the failure to learn from it, right?
Right.
And so, how do you get people to really own up to it so that they can examine it, so they can learn from it, instead of shoving it under the carpet like it never happened? Laura, how did you?
So I would say, we work in a very commodity-driven business, obviously. There's some really interesting places of innovation. We're in a very small creative team. So I'd say how we best deal with failure is around the piloting, starting out small so that we know that the impacts won't be so great that we can't learn from it and take things more broadly. But being able to kind of start small, see what works and doesn't work, because more often than not, it doesn't all run smoothly, and there's pieces that we can learn from it and improve upon before it impacts more people, before we have to kind of roll things out more broadly. So doing it in that kind of measured way has made our team really successful.
Is anybody doing anything to actually encourage the opposite, the innovation? Anything on your team to encourage people to innovate, award them? Or how do you get a recruiting team past the failure point so that you're instead of incentivizing them not to fail, you're incentivizing them to be kind of in a constant state of beta, or taking those intelligent risks, as LinkedIn would say. It's one of the principles at LinkedIn is intelligent risks, beta. Don't be afraid, and it's actually baked into the culture. Do you have anything like that within your organizations?
Yeah, you went too deep. So I can give you an example of how we do some brainstorming and really try to think differently. But then you were like, how do you inculcate it into everything? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, how do you do that?
All right, well, back up.
Please answer.
I was looking for the answer here. Come on.
Solve the problems.
We have a recruiting summit every summer, and all of the recruiters, the coordinators, everyone comes to Fort Lauderdale. And this summer, one of the things that I asked everyone to do is bring with you 3 magazines, and I didn't tell them why. And then what I asked them to do, it was the very first thing we did, was think about what your future vision is for this talent acquisition team. And now go into those magazines and pull out the pictures that really, and then having each of them talk about what their vision was, it ended up being this fantastic conversation about how we can move forward together, how our vision can really be game-changing, what things we can start to do differently. So I don't know if you can use that exact same exercise twice, but we try to do some things to really make people think differently broadly about talent acquisition, not just about my job and how I get a rec filled.
I have a little example. So, like I have a pretty new team. As I'm hiring them, I'm really selling my belief that we're changing the world, right? We're going to do things differently. It's going to be earth-shattering change we're going to do. And if that's not painful, and that's not breaking eggs, and that's not causing trouble, then you're just doing it the same way. Yeah. So to think like, if we're changing it, we're doing things totally different, it is going to be breaking things. And that's okay, because at the end, it's going to be way better than it is now. So it's just the way we do it. There is going to be pain. It's pain tolerance, I think, pain management, and pain communication, I think is what it is.
One of the things, it's a very conservative environment where we work. So in central human resources, it's cube world. We like to celebrate the little victories. And so being from Sacramento, I've got a very large cowbell. Every time we get a hire, we ring it very loud. And in our bi-monthly meetings, the recruiters come together and we whiteboard and we talk about ideas that are related to a challenge, something that they've run into, and then we kind of talk about it and put it up there. And then we start to tackle about how we can take those on. And then at the very end of the meeting, all of our meetings end with a thing called Good of Game, where we celebrate something good professionally and something personally. And I think that you always want to do that praising in public. You want to encourage you want to foster the environment of innovation, but you want people to feel good about what they do, even if it's small, even if it's huge. And we give cars out to people, brand new cars, yeah.
Sign me up.
Just slid that in at the end.
Ferraris. Lauren, how about you?
So I'm from Calgary, and I just realized I don't have a cowbell in my office, so I'm going to go get a really big one.
That's like the Denver of Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we need a lot more. Yeah, we need a lot more cowbell in the office. But I would say, so we're in a different group. So we have talent acquisition strategy in one area, and we sit there, and then talent acquisition operations is in another area, and we're both on 2 very different journeys. The TA operations recruitment side is really on the process improvement journey and trying to get the metrics figured out and get the process hammered out. And we're really on the journey of bringing different conversations to the business. And we've had some really amazing wins when we've been able to pull data together and some different ideas and really facilitate an entirely different conversation with the business leaders in the organization about how we treat talent, how we can acquire talent, how we can build talent, and how we can really reduce the risk to the organization through thinking differently. And that's taken a while to get to. And working through a lot of a lot of iterations of understanding the information ourselves, but not being able to communicate that and influence with the leaders, and going back and working on it a little bit differently and presenting information in different ways. We finally now have a seat at the table to really be those trusted advisors, and that has been really interesting.
I want to kind of double click on something you said earlier, Lauren, too, is you know, one of the problems with failures for organizations is it costs money, right?
Yeah.
There's a cost to that failure, and sometimes if it's a big failure, there's a bigger cost. New Coke, anyone? I can't imagine how much that costs. Although I think they go for quite a bit now on the internet if you still have one of those original cans. But you know, how do you be innovative? You know, we're talking about failure as a way to iterate and to you know, innovate. How do you convince your executives to take the risks to allow your organizations to be at the forefront and to continue pushing the envelope with recruitment? Because you know, we all need to do it. You know, I was listening to Fred Kaufman yesterday, and he was telling this story about, you know, two guys who are sitting there, and the bear's coming after him, and one guy sits down and starts putting on his tennis shoes, and the other guy goes, "What are you doing? We got to run. The bear's gonna get us." And he's like, "No, I just have to outrun you." Right? So how do we stay ahead of our competitors and innovate constantly? So anyone, how do you guys approach that with your executives?
So I actually did a presentation to my boss and my boss's boss a couple weeks ago, talking about best practices. And I was very measured in how I pulled the best practices. I pulled from GE, which is a ton bigger than we are. I pulled from Intuit very purposefully because we took a senior leader from Intuit a few years ago, and he's an agitator on my leadership team, so I want to understand what's going on there. And I also pulled from a completely different space in terms of looking at Amazon. So looking at some of the best practices that they're doing that we haven't even begun to think about. And it really got this great conversation going around, well, we should think about that, shouldn't we? So sometimes when you just put the kernel out there and they see, yeah, other people are doing this, hey, go back and find out, how did they do that? How did they make that successful? Let's see if we can pilot that. I think sometimes just putting the kernel out there and watering it a little bit will help it to grow.
Pilot, I keep hearing pilot. It's
Yes.
it's a $6 million pilot.
But like to me, it's three things, and this is common, but one is know your audience. Like, what does the executive really want to hear? What presses their button? So for us, it's like data, and being cool with the market, right? Because we're data centers. We're trying to be cool because we're not cool. And then two is have air cover, right? I mean, you have to have your boss in there totally understanding it, totally buying it, and helping you sell it.
Yeah.
And then the third is, this is what will continue to happen if we don't make the change, and this is what will happen when we do make the change. So I do a lot of before and afters, and HireVue really helped us to say, in this last pitch we did, like, here's how other companies have used it, here's the predictive analytics that you'll get from this. So it was a total package and not just a sell for one benefit, I guess. Yeah.
Or if we don't do anything, we're going to fail, right? That's another argument.
Right.
I oftentimes present sort of workforce shortages and labor shortages, and here's where we project to be if we don't invest. So that kind of helps those pilots. How about you, Lauren?
So I would say that very much to Melissa, we look at our industry, and a lot of times, like, they just really care that we're not worse than the guy next door.
Just got to outrun the bear.
Yeah, exactly. Just got to outrun the bear, and so that's cool. Like, it's okay if we're just not the worst at it, but sometimes we want to be the best at it. But I found. So for the last couple of years, we've been the #1 employer in Canada on LinkedIn, which I thought was awesome. Like, high-fiving myself. Went out, bought a really nice bottle of wine, brought that to the executive, was like, look, we're #1 on LinkedIn. It's like, I don't know what that means. Like, what does that mean
Thanks
to
for the
me?
wine,
What
though.
does this mean for our ability to recruit? What does this mean about reducing the risk to our organization? Like, how do you really turn this into business results? So being able to take this kind of information or these goals or these things that we're working at and really translating it back to the business impact is what we're always doing. So, and not doing that, I've learned that that's the #1 thing I have to do.
Yeah, definitely challenging. Bruce?
So you got to answer the question, what does this mean for me? That's what the person's going to ask you.
Yep.
What does it mean to them? We've got some really unique groups on campus, and it comes down to your research. It's presenting information that they want to see. It's telling the story that they want to know. But I do like the apocalypse. You've got to present to them what's going to happen in the next 3 years if we haven't prepared for the mass exodus. In our case, we have 30% of our employee base is retirement eligible. And it's making sure that they understand the ramifications of having a lot of our leaders leaving, a lot of our managers leaving, and a lot of key people. When we have police officers, we have physicians, we have nurses, we have finance people, we have coaches. So we have a little bit of everything on our campus. And if you haven't learned what is in it for them, then you're missing the point. Thus comes right up there, the trusted advisor. You really have taken the time to do your research. I like to go in with numbers. I like to go in with a little bit of information. But if I haven't, it kind of goes back to our old sales days. If I don't know something about the person I'm meeting with, I'm missing out. And you know, it's kind of helpful to know that one of our vice chancellors is an Arsenal fan. That's a English soccer team. And going in and telling them that, yeah,
We got one.
you're a gunner. I like that. And just, you go in and you start to have the conversation, and then you mix in something a little personal. And, you know, you don't tell him that his team sucks, but you come with something fun about it. And I think be real, be authentic, be realistic. And, you know, sometimes you just got to lay your cards on the table, but you better back it up.
How are your organizations in general with innovation and the converse failure? Do you have a culture of that, or do you have to work to change that or work against it?
Well, once again, you asked the question interestingly. No, we don't have a culture of failure.
No, innovation, come on.
We do have a culture of innovation. Our customer experience leader is in the C-suite. She's on the leadership team. So
You have a leader just dedicated to customer experience?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
and-
What's her name? Can I recruit her?
Now I'm not going to tell you her name. You're going to have to look it up yourself. The whole concept of being design-driven, we started that about 2.5 years ago, and it's something that is really permeated through the culture. There are, workshops where you can start to think about. For me, the customers are hiring managers, business leaders, candidates, and they'll do an exercise with you where you think about what's the customer journey. Put yourself in the customer's shoes. How are they experiencing talent acquisition? And if you can say, in sunshines and rainbows, what does that journey look like when it's at its best? And then figure out, here's where I am, how far am I from there, and what are steps I can take to get there? So there are a lot of really great tools that they've given us to start to think about. Each of us has customers, so how can you improve the customer experience to help drive basic solutions for the business?
Yeah, so we just started using the word innovation, but I think the benefit of our company is it's very collaborative, and I still think collaboration is the key to innovation. Right, so people want to know what's going on. They want to get involved. And I think whenever you're doing a big change or something new, the more people that you get voices from that's different than your own, it helps speed up the entire process. So I think collaboration and getting people involved. And there was an old, IDEO is always a popular one that people go to, and they have that bring all the different animals around one watering hole, which I think is not really possible, but as many different voices you have around one problem, it speeds it up and gets to innovation as quick as possible. So I think we try to do that as much as we can.
I think we have two things going on at our company. One, we're an oil sands company, so we face a lot of environmental challenges, and there's a lot of passion and innovation around improving the environmental performance, reclaiming land as quickly as possible, and there's been a lot of really good wins there. At the same time, it's also a commodity business, so it's very process-oriented, and sometimes you just need people that are really good at just coming to work and doing that one thing day in and day out. Being passionate about their job, finding opportunities for improvement, but there's definitely those two competing forces. And I would say that goes back to our teams and how we're kind of split up. There's definitely the get really good at the process, really define the metrics, really get after the data, reduce time to fill, all of those journeys. And then there's the other side where it is really more of the innovation and how can we do things differently. And there's definitely lots of opportunity within our organization to bring those ideas forward, but always bringing it back to the business impacts.
Right.
Yeah.
Achievers.
And like I mentioned earlier, innovation is one of our core operating principles. We feel at Berkeley, if we fail, then we're letting down the public education system. And we can't always let Harvard and Stanford have the upper leg on us. They're okay institutions. But when we look at innovation, I mean, I think everybody in this room is creative. We've got 36,000 students that are striving for innovation every day. And if we can't embrace it, then we as administrators are failing in our mission. So innovation is really ingrained into all of us. And I think it's showing the courage to allow people to fail, learn from the mistake, help them up, and encourage them to do it right. And I think it's important to, once again, put yourself out there.
Great. Well, we're at about 9:45, so about 15 minutes for questions. And I want to open it up for you guys to ask any questions that you might have, or maybe even make statements from your experience.
Don't all come up at once.
Yeah, no. If you can use the mic there, please.
So I have a
I'm sorry, we'll go first here and then over to you.
Excuse me. Hi. Trish with Fidelity. We do pilots as well, but we've had some unintended consequences, and I was wondering how the panel has combated that, or if they've seen those. When you use the word pilot, sometimes with your users, there's an expectation it'll end. So maybe I'm not fully on board with trying this, or, oh, okay, till they get to the next thing. So I was wondering if you've had those experiences and what you've done to help that.
So I feel like I keep saying the same thing almost, but it's what we're doing today for the bigger vision. So even though it's a pilot and there is an end, the goal is to figure out how it works so we can get to the big vision at the end, and the ROI and the metrics that we're trying to get to, and moving the organization. So it is a pilot and it may fail, but it doesn't mean that the vision's gone. And it's just revisiting and making it. So it may end, but it doesn't end the vision.
You also might want to just have a stake in the ground as to when the pilot ends and when it becomes part of business as usual. Just making it clear, pilot done, and now this is part of what we do all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe that transition will help you get out of the pilot.
Yeah, that's good.
Clear communication on that. It's just letting everybody know what the goal of it is. We have 10 other campuses, so we always have the opportunity to do a pilot. I think that we're running a pilot every other month, and people, we're fighter pilots basically, so we learn to deal with it.
That was Trish. Thank you, Trish.
Hi, my name is Laura Hyde. I'm a mid-level recruiting manager for Amazon Kindle. So thank you for using some of our ideas, or looking at them anyway. So I've been in the Kindle org for 5 years, and because of my tenure in the same group, I have had the opportunity to see a few leaders come and go. And one of the things I don't feel like I'm hearing today from the panel is more around the potential collateral damage to the recruiting organization and the teams that are driving these pilots. There's definitely, I think, once or twice been these, big ideas that come in with new leaders, and I think the whip effect that it's had on the line recruiters has been quite intense, and so I'm just curious to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is you can't go guardrail to guardrail. I mean, if your hiring managers are getting whiplash, you're trying too many things. You're going too far to the left and too far to the right. The other thing is, as a leader, you have to take responsibility. It's what someone else said. You have to say, okay, we put this in place, we tried it, it didn't work, and here's what we learned from it, and here's what we're going to do differently to avoid it happening in the future. So, A, no whiplash, B, take accountability.
Well, I guess just to be clear, I'm talking more about the whiplash to the recruiters. I think in this day and age, and I'm sure everyone in the room would agree, it's very difficult to keep good recruiters in your companies and to keep them engaged and keep them happy, and I think that part of the challenge is when
I don't have a problem keeping good recruiters.
when we push an idea, I think that maybe the buy-in isn't there from them. I think if we don't look at the full big picture of how that might affect everybody in the organization, that can be really challenging.
think you need to sit down with your recruitment team from the very beginning and map out the goals of what's supposed to be there. Be prepared for what the fallout is and have authentic conversations with them, both in your team meetings and then in your one-on-ones that you have with them. Because unfortunately, I think in today's time, whiplash occurs every day. You're always worried about losing one of your recruiters to somewhere else. But if you provide the environment, if you give them a voice, if they're involved in the discussions and you're not just saying, hey, today we're going to just do a pilot on Taleo, but you can't do anything. It doesn't necessarily go as planned if you haven't included them in the conversation. So I think making sure that they have a voice, they have an understanding of what you're doing, and you have to be that positive force. I tell you what, there's some real negative stuff that happens on a daily basis. And yes, I say no to my 17-year-old. But when it comes down to your recruitment team, you have to be positive. You have to tell them this is going to work, and if it doesn't, we'll figure out a way to make it better.
Well, and I know for us too, like we've always worked really closely with the recruitment team, obviously, but what we've done is really found those champions within the group that would really kind of latch on it and help us share that excitement and share the lessons learned and get the team really riled up, because it is a lot around adaptability, and there is a lot of things that we are trying to do differently, and we're not looking for it to be the same. So we often go and find those people that can really champion it for us within the team.
I think for me, it's leaving some room for change. So often we tell the recruiters, okay, now we want you to change your workflow and do things differently, but you still need to do your 45, 50 hours per week. And they're like, well, when am I going to do this? So as a leader, you have to figure out how do you reduce that recruiter's workload to the point where they can make that change from either, going through and sorting resumes to proactively sourcing, whatever the change needs to be that you're looking for.
I
that's a
am
really
that
good point,
stereotypical
yeah.
manager. Like, I'm exactly what you're talking about. The new guy with the deck, and here's what we're all going to do, and everyone's like, whoa, dude. So I am. That's who I am. But what I've learned in that first story I told about, getting everyone in a room was I started with the outside in that way. Started with the people and came into my team. And what I'm trying to do now, hopefully, is start from the inside out, right? Bringing the recruiters along with me with the change. As opposed to I'm going to go tell everyone in the world, you guys need to catch up, right? So inside out, I would say, is a better way to do it.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. Thank you so much for your question. Sir?
Just real quick, I have 3 daughters too, and my oldest is 9, so what's ahead for me?
Do you have good bourbon?
No, so on a serious note, you guys all talked about getting stakeholder buy-in. I just have one question around defining where the stakeholder ends, because I've been on projects where I've blinked and all of a sudden gone from convincing 5 people it's a good idea to convincing 300 people it's a good idea. So how do you define what a stakeholder is?
We've found actually, and I've totally been in that situation, and I think I have a nickname around the office. I've just been sent photos, but it's either like a wild pony or some sort of a unicorn, because I'm often just pushing ideas ahead and I haven't talked to everyone and their firstborn son to get sign off. So what we find really helpful is RACIs for that, and just defining, we're going to you for this approval, and we're assuming that you are speaking on behalf of this, 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 and this. And if you're not comfortable with that, then tell me and we'll go and talk to that person. But we've had to be, because we're in such a big bureaucratic organization, we've had to be very prescriptive about who we're going to and why we're going to for that approval. And, and if we don't hear something from you, we've assumed it's cool. And we're moving on, because you can't always sit and wait and circle the wagon a bunch. So that's been a tool we've used.
Hi, my name is Randall. I'm from a company called MindJet, and we deal with innovation, which is why I wanted to step in here. I heard a couple examples about innovating within the talent acquisition function, and you mentioned your recruiting summit, which I assumes once a year. How do you do that with the wider organization? So it's great doing that within the talent community. So I guess this is sort of talent and culture, and it's something that should happen constantly as far as I'm concerned. How do you do that within the business? Is it through technology? Is it picking up the phone? Curious how that works.
How do I do what?
So just to innovate within the team. So how to come up with something new. You're talking about game changing, how to get the stakeholder buy-in, and not only will your recruiters have a different answer, but Sally in finance might have a different answer. Your customers might have a different answer. I guess I'm just curious the whole 360 approach.
Yeah, so we do collect a lot of feedback. I have a recruitment marketing leader on my team who is regularly gathering feedback from applicants and from candidates in the process. Hiring managers get SAT surveys. So I try to, on a quarterly basis, be at a point where I can look at a QBR, understand where I am, and understand where I've got to make some change, or where I may have to make a fairly big stride and innovate in order to get to where I want to go. So I don't think you can, maybe there's a way to be regularly innovative and prescriptive. And
Mindjet.com, just want to throw that out.
Yeah, he's pitching.
Okay, good commercial. But what I try to think about is how can I continuously improve? I'm always looking at a set of different things. So what levers am I pulling this month to think about improvement?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I'm going to cut us off there because we have 5 minutes, and I think I'll give you a little bit of transition time. But I want to thank you for allowing us to try this. We thought, get past the presentations and the huge slide decks and talk about what didn't work and how does that parlay into innovation. We'd love your thoughts. I think there is a survey mechanism. Should we do these again? Should we not? You know, give us your feedback on that, if you will. And join me in thanking these people for sharing their stories of failure. Thank you. That they've learned from. Thank you. Thank you for attending.